Well, a very good evening and welcome to the Sligo GAA Centre of Excellence on this Thursday night, where we are for the Sligo GAA Club Championship draws for 2025. We've got plenty to bring you over the course of the next 40 minutes or so. 5 draws in all, 4 in football and 1 in hurling, as we map out the path to glory for the clubs around the county for the championships later on this year. We'll get into the football draws in a little while, but first we're going to start straight away with the Davis's Restaurant Sligo Senior Hurling Championship draw for 2025. And to conduct the draw, I'm delighted to say we're joined by Jerome Quinn, the chair of the hurling committee in Sligo. Jerome, you're very welcome. And hurling in Sligo, we've seen the Sligo county team in action over the course of the last couple of months in the National League. They've got the championship coming up and then the club championship to look forward to later in the year as well.
That's right. Very competitive National Hurling League. Unfortunately, I ended up on the wrong side of a few narrow defeats, and we're unfortunately relegated this year, although, you know, like Mayo won it and are getting promoted, and quite possibly Sligo could have and won that game and maybe should have. So that's how tight the margins are. Nicky Rackard is starting now this weekend with a home game to Louth. We've 3 home games in total, so hopefully better fortunes now and maybe the bit of luck in our favour for the weeks ahead.
Yeah, we wish Sligo well on their endeavours in the championship. Just a word on the club championship draw before we get into it, Jerome. There is a bit of a change to how things will work in the championship this year.
Yeah, previously we would traditionally would have had like 6 or less teams in it. So last year we had 7 teams. We went with 2 groups, but we thought a fairer system this year might be a qualifier system, where there'll be 3 rounds of qualifiers. Then the top 4 teams will progress to the full round robin stage and the county final. So the 2 teams that contested last year's final, Easkey and Avon, are guaranteed a spot in that round robin, and the other 5 teams will play through a series of 3 qualifier games. So the beaten semi-finalists are guaranteed a place in qualifier 3, and the other 3 teams that didn't make the semi-finals last year will play in the round 1 and round 2 qualifier. So hopefully this is a fair system, and any team that doesn't progress to the group stages of the Senior Hurling Championship will play in the Martin Brennan Cup as a development competition for those teams. Yeah. So there's lots of hurling for everybody.
There certainly is lots of hurling for everybody this year. So just to mention, before we get into the draw, the 7 teams competing in the Sligo Senior Hurling Championship for this year, they are Colry St Joseph's, Turlestrane, St Milosh Gales, Coolera Strandhill, Western Gales, Navan, and the reigning champions Easkey. So they're the 7 teams in the competition, and we'll keep you abreast of the format as we go through. So the first draw that we'll make tonight will be the draw for qualifier round 1, and the 3 teams in this draw are St Milosh Gales, Colry St Joseph's and Turlestrane. So we'll draw 2 teams out for the first qualifier round 1 match that will take place in late July. So Jerome, we've got the 3 teams in the bowl, so I'll let you get the draw underway. So the first team out will be the first team into qualifier round 1. And the first team out is
Colry St Joseph's.
So Colry St Joseph's, the first team out of the draw, and they will play in the first round qualifier in the Senior Hurling Championship for this year. And the next team out will be either St Milosh Gales or Turlestrane to play Colry St Joseph's in that qualifier. And that team out is?
That's St Milosh Gales.
St Milosh Gales. So it'll be St Milosh Gales against Colry St Joseph's in the first round qualifier in the Senior Hurling Championship at the end of July. So the winner of that game will go straight through to qualifier round 3, but the loser will have a second chance in qualifier round 2, and that will be against
the last team in the draw, Turlestrane.
That's Turlestrane, the last team of the 3 out from our first draw. So that's how things will line up. It'll be Colry St Joseph's against St Milosh Gales in the first round qualifier, and the loser of that match will play Turlestrane in the second round qualifier. The winner of that match will go through to qualifier round 3, Jerome, which is the next draw that we'll undertake, and that draw will also include Coolera Strandhill, Western Gales, the winner of qualifier round 1 and the winner of qualifier round 2. So I'll let you get this draw underway, Jerome, and the first team out here, either Coolera Strandhill or Western Gales, will play in that qualifier round 3. And the team out is Coolera Strandhill. So Coolera Strandhill will play the winner of qualifier round 1 between Colry St Joseph's and St Milosh Gales. And then just to confirm, the next team out to play the winner of qualifier round 2, and that will be Western Gales. So it'll be Western Gales against the winner of qualifier round 2 between Turlestrane and the loser of qualifier round 1, and Killera-Strandhill will play the winner of qualifier round 1 between Colliery St Joseph's and St Milosh Gales. And then the group stage in the Sligo Senior Hurling Championship for 2025, sponsored by Davis's and the Yates Tavern, will be Easky, Navan and the 2 qualifier round 3 winners in this year's Sligo Senior Hurling Championship. So there's the draw if you're watching with us on Sligo GAA TV this evening, and if you're listening on Ocean FM. Just to recap, the qualifier round 1 will be between Colliery St Joseph's and St Milosh Gales. The qualifier round 2 will be between Turlestrane and the loser of qualifier round 1 between Colliery St Joseph's and St Milosh Gales. And in qualifier round 3, it'll be Killera-Strandhill versus the winner of qualifier round 1, and Western Gales will play the winner of qualifier round 2 before the group stage alongside Easky and Navan gets underway. So Jerome, thank you very much indeed for your help, and the start of the Sligo Senior Hurling Championship will be on the weekend of July 26th, 27th, later on this summer. And as Jerome said at the outset, the 3 teams that don't make the group stages in the Senior Hurling Championship will play in the Martin Brennan Cup. So those fixtures will be up on sligoga.ie as well for you to recap on in the coming days. And now we'll move on to our next draw of the night, and that is the first of our football draws. That's the Junior B Football Championship for 2025. So to carry out this draw, I'm delighted to say we're joined by the Sligo GAA interim chairperson, Noel Gallagher. Noel, a very good evening to you. We've got 4 football draws to get through tonight, and lots to look forward to over the next little while. But first, maybe just to recap on Sligo's performance in Castlebar last weekend. It was close. It was close,
Carl. An exciting weekend, absolutely, for all Sligo supporters. Great day out, just shows the future and potential of Sligo senior football and the road that we're travelling. So we have to say, wish them best for the Tailteann Cup ahead. Exciting times ahead.
And on the club front, Noel, I know the spring leagues are underway already, but as I say, lots to look forward to at the championships to begin later on this year.
Yeah, there's a great season ahead. Like going by the way the championship finished up last year, when we take our replays that we had with the Junior A in Turlestrane, the 2 nights there, smaller venue under lights, absolutely fantastic atmosphere in it. And we had the same in the senior, a replay, great excitement around us. So there's a huge competition there, and it's just for who takes it at the end, and that's what it's all about. Definitely the nighttime stuff did bring a different element to it. So
yeah, it certainly did. You're into a new role this week, a few more responsibilities.
Yes, a little bit more. I suppose just take this opportunity to commend Sean on the 4.5 years of work that he's done in Sligo GAA and wish him well for the future. Yeah, absolutely, and we all echo that here tonight as well. Just before we get the draw underway, I'll call on Seamus Hannon, who's with us here tonight as well, the National Account Manager with our sponsor Arrivo Consumer Foods. Seamus, great to have you with us again tonight, and Arrivo and Homeland sponsors of the competitions again this year.
Yeah, good evening, Paul. Thanks very much, and it's a great honour. We're delighted to be part of the Club Championship for another year. We're a long-time partner with Sligo GAA at this stage. Really good fit for our business and a good fit for Sligo, so we're delighted to be part of it again.
Yeah, your brand's very prominent around Sligo, and it is an important sponsorship for your company, as you say.
Yeah, it is indeed, and like Arrivo, through our brands Connacht Gold and Homeland, we're part of the local community in Sligo. Most of the clubs are located within the community, and we're right in the heart of that, and delighted to be part of it. A fantastic championship last year, and looking forward to a great year this year and lots of football.
Yeah, there'll be lots of football and lots of excitement. But thank you very much indeed for joining us tonight, Seamus. Great to have you with us for the draws this evening. So as I say, we've got 4 football draws to get through, and we'll start with the Junior B Football Championship for 2025, sponsored by Connacht Gold. And Noel, I'll just get you maybe to run through the format for the Junior B at the outset. We've got 4 groups.
We have 4 groups. We have 2 groups of 4 and 2 groups of 3.
Okay, so that's pretty straightforward, and we've got lots of competing teams in the championship this year, 14 in all. So just before we get things underway, I'll run you through the teams in the competition. Ballymote, Colliery St Joseph's, Castleconnor, Killarney Mullabrina, Killera-Strandhill, Curry, Easky, Enniscrone Kilglass, O'More Gales, Shamrock Gales, St Farnans, St Pat's, St Mary's and St Michael's. So they are the competing teams in the Junior B Football Championship, sponsored by Connacht Gold for 2025. So Noel, I'll let you get the draw underway with the first team out to be drawn into a 4-team Group 1. So the first team out in the Junior B
Curry
Football
B.
Championship is Curry. So they are the first team into Group 1. The next team out will be the first team into Group 2.
Owenmore Gales.
Owenmore Gales, the first team into Group 2. Their first team contested last year's intermediate final. The first team into Group 3 will be
St Mary's.
St Mary's. That's St Mary's third team. And they will be the first team in Group 3, which is a 3-team group, and Group 4 is also a 3-team group. The first team in, Noel,
Shamrock Gales.
is Shamrock Gales, who also have 3 teams in adult football, and that's their third team into Group 4. So now we go back to Group 1 again to join Curry. The next team out in the Junior B Football Championship draw is
Castleconnor.
So Castleconnor join Curry in Group 1. Next, on to Group 2 again. Owenmore Gales are already in there. This is a 4-team group as well.
St Pat's.
So St Pat's go in alongside Owenmore Gales, their neighbours there in Group 2. Now to the 3-team Group 3. The next team out to join St Mary's is
Colliery St Joseph's.
So Colliery St Joseph's in with St Mary's in Group 3. And then the second team into Group 4, a 3-team group again. Shamrock Gales are already there. And the next team out, Noel, is
Eastgate.
So Eastgate joins Shamrock Gales in Group 4. Back we go to Group 1 again. Curry and Castleconnor both in there in the Junior B Football Championship draw. And the next team out to join those 2 teams is
Coolera Strandhill.
So Coolera Strandhill into Group 1. They join Curry and Castleconnor. Now to Group 2 again. Owenmore Gales and St Pat's are already there. And the third team in is
Kulani Mullabrina.
Killarney Mullabrina into Group 2. Next team out is going to go into Group 3 alongside St Mary's and Colliery St Joseph's.
Ballymote.
So Ballymote complete the running order there in Group 3. They join St Mary's and Colliery St Joseph's. That a 3-team group. And the final 3-team group is Group 4. Shamrock Gales and Eastgate are already there. And the next team in is
St Michael's.
St Michael's alongside Eastgate and neighbours Shamrock Gales in Group 4. So 2 teams left to go. This team will go into Group 1. And that team is
Enniscrone Kilglass.
So Enniscrone Kilglass go in alongside Coolera Strandhill, Castleconnor and Curry in Group 1 in the Junior B draw. And the last team out to complete the draw alongside Owenmore Gales, St Pat's and Killarney Mullabrina in Group 2. And that team, Noel, is
St Farnans.
St Farnans into Group 2. So that's your Connacht Junior B Football Championship draw for 2025. Just to recap the 4 groups for you. In Group 1, Curry, Castleconnor, Coolera Strandhill and Enniscrone Kilglass. In Group 2, Owenmore Gales, St Pat's, Killarney Mullabrina and St Farnans. In Group 3, St Mary's, Colliery St Joseph's and Ballymote. And in Group 4, it's Shamrock Gales, Eastgate and St Michael's. So that's the Connacht Junior B Football Championship draw for 2025. And our football competitions will all get underway on the August Bank Holiday weekend this summer. So that's how things will line up in the Junior B. And we're just getting set up now for the next draw of the night. And that is the Connacht Junior A Football Championship. And Noel, just before we get underway, I might get you to run us through the format, please, for the Junior A competition for this year.
The Junior A competition, Cathal, we have 2 groups of 5 and it's a seeded competition, so both finalists and semi-finalists are seeded. So we'll, in the pot first we'll have the finalists, 2 finalists, and then we'll create the first group and then sequence in for the semi-finalists, and then the remaining 6 will go in then and we'll draw them 1 for each.
Yeah, that's how it's going to work in the Connacht Junior A Football Championship. So to run you through the competing teams, we'll take a look at the competing teams. Clunacool, St Mary's, Drumcliff Ross's Point, St Melosh Gales, Turlestrane, St John's, St Michael's, Eastern Harps, Shamrock Gales and Tubber Curry are the teams competing in the Junior A Championship for this year. 10 teams in there. And as Noel says, we do have seeding in this competition for this year. So the first 2 teams into the bowl are St John's, the team who were relegated from the intermediate grade last year, and Clonakul, who were the beaten finalists last year. They lost out to Ballymote in the decider. So both of those teams will be drawn into separate groups. So we'll get the draw underway, Noel. And the first team out will be the team into Group 1. So this is the Junior A Championship draw for 2025. And the first team out?
St John's.
St John's. So they are the first team into Group 1. Both team groups will contain 5 teams. And the next team out, second seeded team in this draw,
Is Clonakul.
so Clonakul, the first team into Group 2. Next, we go to the next 2 seeded teams, and they are St Michael's and St Mary's, beaten semi-finalists last year. So no, these 2 sides will go into separate groups as well.
Yes.
So the first team out will go into Group 1, along with St John's, and that team is...
St Michael's.
So St Michael's joins St John's in Group 1 in the Junior A Football Championship. And the second team out, just to confirm, last team in the canister,
St Mary's.
is St Mary's. So St Mary's join Clonakul in Group 2. So they're the seeded teams now into the draw. Group 1, St John's and St Michael's, and Group 2, Clonakul and St Mary's. So now we move on to the 6 remaining teams in the Connacht Junior A Football Championship. And Noel, I'll let you get the draw back underway. So we've got 6 teams left to go. From Cliff, Ross's Point, Shamrock Gales, Torlestrane, Eastern Harp, St Milosh Gales and Tubbercurry, the 6 remaining teams. The first one out.
St Milosh Gales.
So St Milosh Gales join St Michael's and St John's in Group 1. Now the next team out will go into Group 2 alongside Clonakul and St Mary's.
Eastern Harps.
So Eastern Harps join Clonakul and St Mary's in Group 2. Next team out will go into Group 1 and join the 3 teams in there.
Drumcliff, Ross's Point.
So Drumcliff, Ross's Point into Group 1 alongside St John's, St Michael's and St Milosh Gales. Next team out will go into Group 2.
Shamrock Gales.
Shamrock Gales join Eastern Harps, St Mary's and Clonakul in Group 2. Now 2 teams left. This next team out will complete Group 1.
Torlestrane.
So Torlestrane into Group 1 alongside Drumcliff, Ross's Point, St Milosh Gales, St Michael's and St John's. And the final team out in the Connacht Junior A Football Championship draw is
Tubbercurry.
Tubbercurry. So they join Shamrock Gales, Eastern Harps, St Mary's and Clonakul in Group 2. So that's your draw for the Connacht Junior A Football Championship for 2025. Just to recap the 2 groups, in Group 1, St John's, St Michael's, St Milosh Gales, Drumcliff, Ross's Point and Torlestrane. And in Group 2, Clonakul, St Mary's, Eastern Harps, Shamrock Gales and Tubbercurry. So that's how things will line up in the Connacht Junior A Championship. The competition will get underway in early August. And to bring you some analysis on the draws tonight, delighted to say we're joined by Torlestrane's Fintan Kennedy, a winner of no less than 7 Sligo Club Championship medals with his club in South Sligo. Fintan, a very good evening to you. So what's jumping out at you from that Junior A Championship draw?
Well, just even looking at the teams, what's jumping out at me is the young players that are coming through on those teams. You know, they're the second teams from some teams. I was lucky enough to commentate, and Noel mentioned it in the nighttime game in Torlestrane. The draw between in the final last year was fantastic football between Clonakul and, you know, it swung from end to end and it could have gone either way. So Clonakul will really want to build on that. You know, St John's went down, and I think, you know, this is an opportunity for them to jump back up. St Michael's also were, you know, they were unlucky not to make the final. So you've got And then obviously I'm looking at the Tullastrand one there for home, but I'm glad that we've avoided Clonakul in the group. So there'll be good rivalry there between Clonakul and Tubbercurry, and then also like you've Eastern Harps who have, they've done really well at underage with that 2006 group, and it'll be interesting to see. There'll be a number of them that will be coming through on that, as have, and they've been always against Drumcliff Ross's Point in that. So there's some great games, and it's great to see third teams in some clubs, and those second teams are as competitive as some of the first teams, and it's that difficulty of getting out, like Ballymote and Clonakul. It's that difficulty of getting out of that division and getting out of the junior. And you saw what O'More Gales did last year when they got out of junior and got into intermediate. So there's a great levelling of standards, and you can see that in our county teams.
Yeah, certainly can. So that's the Junior A Championship draw. Fintan, thanks for that for now. So now we'll move on to our next draw of the night, and back to Noel again for the Connacht Gold Intermediate Football Championship draw, Noel, for 2025. So you might just run us through quickly the format for that draw.
So in this again, we have 10 teams, 2 groups of 5. This is seeded also. So we have Colliery, who have joined, came down to intermediate. They're seeded against Owen Morse. That'll create Group 1 and 2. And then we have the 2 second seed below them, Killarney, Mullabrina and Giva. Yeah. So we'll go and draw the first ones first of it.
Yeah, so we'll commence the draw. Just to run through the teams in the intermediate draw: Colliery, St Joseph's, Killarney, Mullabrina, Ballymote, Castleconnor, St Farnans, O'More Gales, Giva, Bunanadden, Enniscrone Glass and St Pat's. They're the 10 teams competing in the Connacht Gold Intermediate Football Championship for 2025. So Noel, as you say, the first seeded teams are Colliery, St Joseph's and O'More Gales. So we'll start the draw with those 2 teams into either group. So the first team out will go into Group 1. Colliery came down from senior last year.
Colliery, St Joseph's.
And it is Colliery, St Joseph's, the first team out. So they're the first team into Group 1. And the next team will be the other seeded team.
O'More Gales.
So O'More Gales, the beaten finalists from last year, they go into Group 2. So now we move on to the next 2 seeded teams. They are Killarney, Mullabrina and Giva, the 2 beaten semi-finalists from last year. So they will go into either group as well. So Noel will draw out the first of them. And the first team out into Group 1.
Giva.
So Giva go in alongside Colliery, St Joseph's in Group 1. And the next team out will join O'More Gales in Group 2.
Killarney, Mullabrina.
So Killarney, Mullabrina will play O'More Gales in Group 2. They met last year in the championship as well. So that's how things line up in Group 2, O'More Gales and Killarney, Mullabrina. So next now, Noel, we'll move on to the 6 remaining teams: Ballymote, Castleconnor, St Farnans, Bunanadden, Enniscrone Glass and St Pat's. And they're the 6 teams left. And the first of those, Noel, will go into Group 1. This is the Connacht Gold Intermediate Football Championship draw in Sligo for 2025. So the first team out of this draw into Group 1 is
St Farnans.
So St Farnans join Giva and Colliery St Joseph's in Group 1. The next team now goes into Group 2 alongside O'More Gales and Killarney Mullabrina. Bunanadden in alongside their neighbours there, Killarney Mullabrina and O'More Gales in Group 2. So the next team out will go into Group 1. And that team is?
Enniscrone Glass.
So Enniscrone Glass join St Farnans, Giva and Colliery St Joseph's in Group 1. The next team out now will go into Group 2. Castleconnor into Group 2 alongside Bunanadden, Killarney Mullabrina and O'More Gales. 2 teams remaining in the intermediate draw. This team out will complete the running order in Group 1. And that team is?
St Pat's.
So St Pat's join Enniscrone Glass, St Farnans, Giva and Colliery St Joseph's in Group 1. And the next team out will complete the draw and go into Group 2. And that team is? Ballymote, the Junior A football champions from last year. So that's the draw for the Connacht Gold Intermediate Football Championship for 2025. Let's recap the draw for you. In Group 1, Colliery St Joseph's, Giva, St Farnans, Enniscrone Glass and St Pat's. And in Group 2, O'More Gales, Killarney Mullabrina, Bunnanadden, Castleconnor and Ballymote. So that's how things line up for the intermediate grade in 2025. Fintan, that's a pretty even looking draw.
It is, yeah. It's interesting. Like as you said there, Carl, you've got O'More Gales, Killarney, Mulnabrina, Bunnanadden and Ballymote, so there shouldn't be too far to travel there. There'll be good rivalry around in there, and Castleconnor in with them. You know, the teams there. Bunnanadden had, you know, they've started building there. They've the two lads from Boyle, Shane Spellman, in as their coach this year, and they've started out very, very strong. You're also looking at, I suppose, on the Ballymote, you know, trying to build on the great momentum that they got from last year, and that extra 8 weeks training to the Connacht Junior final, could really see it stands to them, and the way it was around the town. And the same with O'More Gales, like Killarney Mulnabrina beaten by O'More Gales in the semi-final comprehensively, so they'll be looking to kind of put a mark down again. I'm sure Bernie Finan and Eamon Gorman there. So and then on the other side you've Colliery looking to bounce back, and Giva, like Donald Conlon, I met him out here last week, and good to see Donald coming back from injury. And then you've the West there with Farnans, Inniscrone and St. Pat's, so that should be make for interesting stuff, and great competition, you know.
Very even competition for sure. We can bring you the fixtures for round one as well on the 2nd and 3rd of August. Even if you could just pop those back up on, or I could get them there on screen a second ago. There we are again. So St. Farnans will play Enniscrone Kiglass, and Colliery St. Joseph's will play Giva. That's in the first round in Group 1 on August 2nd or 3rd. And the first fixtures in Group 2 will be Bunnanadden against Castleconnor and O'More Gales versus Killarney Mulnabrina. And those fixtures will be available on sligogaa.ie in the coming days and weeks, where you can recap on the Connacht Gold Intermediate Football Championship draw for 2025. So now we'll move on to our 5th and final draw of the night, and that is the Homeland Senior Football Championship draw for 2025. So Noel, again, just briefly, I'll get you to run through the format, please.
Carl, for the senior football, again, it's 2 groups of 5 seeded, first seeds and second seeds. We have Colera Strandhill opposite Malosha Gales, and Shamrock Gales opposite St. Mary's. 5 weekends. 2 place teams in each qualify for semi-finals. Same goes, bottom 2 place teams in both groups for relegation finals. So you should make again for an interesting competition.
Yeah, it absolutely should. So the 10 teams in the Homeland Senior Football Championship are Colera Strandhill, Shamrock Gales, Curry, Easkey, Torlestrane, St. Melosh Gales, St. Mary's, Drumcliff Ross's Point, Eastern Harps and Tubbercurry. So they're the 10 competing teams, and the first part of our draw, Noel, is to draw out the 2 seeded teams, the 2 county finalists from last year into either group, Colera Strandhill and St. Melosh Gales. So I'll let you get the draw, Noel, underway. So the first team out will be drawn into Group 1 as the first team in there. One of our county finalists from last year.
Colera Strandhill. So
Colera Strandhill, the holders of the OMB Hunt Cup and the Connacht Club champions as well. The first team out of our draw, they go into Group 1. The first team into Group 2 is
St. Melosh Gales.
St. Melosh Gales, the beaten county finalists last year. They'll be hoping to go one better this time around. So next we move on to the 2 other seeded teams, the beaten semi-finalists from last year. They are Shamrock Gales and St. Mary's. So Noel, I'll get you to draw them into either group, please. So the first team out will join Colera Strandhill in Group 1.
Shamrock Gales.
Shamrock Gales join Colera Strandhill in Group 1 of the Homeland Sligo Senior Football Championship for next season. The next team out into Group 2
St. Mary's.
Is St. Mary's. So they join St. Melosh Gales in Group 2. 2 teams that know each other well from recent seasons. So now we move on to the third part of the draw, and that's to distribute the 6 remaining teams into the competition. Curry, Easkey, Torlestrane, Drumcliff Ross's Point, Eastern Harps and Tubbercurry, the teams remaining. So the next team out, Noel, will be into Group 1.
Curry.
So Curry go in alongside Colera Strandhill and Shamrock Gales. The next team out will join St. Melosh Gales and St. Mary's in Group 2. And that team out is
Torlestrane.
So Torlestrane in with St. Mary's and St. Melosh Gales in Group 2. 4 teams left. The next team out will go into Group 1. And that team is?
Eastern Harps.
So Eastern Harps, who are back up in senior, having won the intermediate last year, they'll play Curry, Shamrock Gales and Kildare Strandhill at least on their return to the top table. One more team to complete Group 1 in a moment, but first the next team into Group 2 will be
Tubbercurry.
also Tubbercurry, in alongside Turlestrand, their neighbours, St Mary's and St Melosh Gales in Group 2. Next up, we'll have the final team into Group 1. 2 teams remaining. And this team will join Eastern Harps, Curry, Shamrock Gales and Kildare Strandhill.
Easky.
Into Group 1, along with Eastern Harps, Curry, Shamrock Gales and Kildare Strandhill. And the final team out to complete our Homeland Senior Football Championship draw for this year and go into Group 2. And that team is
Drumcliff, Ross's Point.
Drumcliff, Ross's Point. So there's your draw for the Homeland Sligo Senior Football Championship for 2025. To recap, in Group 1, Kildare Strandhill, Shamrock Gales, Curry, Eastern Harps and Easky. And in Group 2, St Melosh Gales, St Mary's, Turlestrand, Tubbercurry and Drumcliff, Ross's Point. So Fintan, that's the draw for the top tier this year. Again, lots of big names in there, and I guess a target maybe on the back of Kildare Strandhill after their heroics in Connacht.
Definitely, you know, and they did us all so proud, you know, and but all of that is forgotten, and we all want to go after them now. But they did, you know, and it has raised the profile as with all the underage work. It has raised the profile with Sligo football. So definitely, you know, I'm looking at like Group 2 is almost the same group as it was last year. Which you had St Melosh Gales, you had St Mary's, Turlestrand. Like we lost to Mary's in the first game, then beat St Melosh in the next game. And the beauty of these games with the 5-team groups is there's a bit of a cadence to it of week on week, and it's a bit like the 20s at the minute. And with the new rules, what we're seeing is the scoring average, and then not alone that, but if teams are on equal points, then you have mini leagues and the scoring average between that. So that's going to be, you know, it's going to be interesting to see. Like we had yesterday 5-17 to 222 in up in Drumshanbo, and we were at one stage we were 7 points down. Then we were 2 points up. Then we went 10 points up, and then it came back to 4. So, you know, these leagues are these sort of mini leagues that will go on within that. And I mean, seeing, you know, everyone is going after Kildare, but you know, St Mary's, Shamrock Gales, like there's no group of death because the teams are working so well. And like you see the guys that are coming in there, like Eastern Harps have come up. They've young guys coming through, and we're also seeing the fruits of the 20s over the last number of years, and the minors, you know, coming to the fore. The likes of Kieran O'Reilly in Drumcliff. You know, you see Adrian Frayne in Bunanadden. You see the Oisin Flynn now in Castleconnor. You know, you've all of these, and it was great to see those lads getting started, getting their game the last week. St Melosh Gales, they may have more Sligo players by the time championship comes around, and you know, you look at St Mary's, will feel they have something to prove. You've lads popping up from the 20s that have been, you know, Ronan Island has had a great season, and you see Conor Flynn last night getting 2-2, Dara Callahan and Dylan Walsh, you know, more Gales. So, you know, it really makes for great excitement, and it will be like, I love the new rules, and I love the format of this because, you know, teams have to go for it.
Format has worked well, hasn't it, in the last few years. So just to recap, if you're just joining us, the Homeland Sligo Senior Football Championship draw for 2025, Kildare Strandhill, Shamrock Gales, Curry, Eastern Harps and Easky make up Group 1, and in Group 2, St Melosh Gales, St Mary's, Turlestrand, Tubbercurry and Drumcliff, Ross's Point. And we can bring you the fixtures as well for the opening round. So Kildare Strandhill, the defending champions, will begin their campaign against Shamrock Gales on the August bank holiday weekend. Also in Group 1, Curry will play Eastern Harps. In Group 2, a big South Sligo derby to get things cracking there with Turlestrand against Tubbercurry, and St Melosh Gales will play St Mary's on the opening weekend. So 2 big fixtures there, 4 big fixtures in fact across the 2 groups there to get things rolling on August 2nd and 3rd later on this year. So that completes our set of draws for tonight. Don't forget that you'll be able to get them back online on Sligo GAA in the coming days and weeks, so you can recap on them, and the fixtures as well will be available there. Don't forget that the Hurling Championship draw that will get underway, the competition at the end of July, and then, as I say, the football competitions get underway on the August bank holiday weekend. That's almost it from us here at Scarden tonight. But before we go, a big thank you to our team behind the scenes, Rory O'Brien and James as well on the cameras here. Thanks to Seamus from Arrivo, to Eamon here as well from Sligo GAA, Noel, Jerome and Finton as well. We look forward to the championships later on this year, and as I say, you'll get the draws back on sligogaa.ie in the coming days. From all of us here at Scarden tonight, it's a very good night.